The morning sunlight was blinding, and I was half minus asleep, trying to roll over, but then I realized a man's hand was resting on my waist. I shot awake, glancing around luxurious chandeliers, elegantly rustic new Chinese minus style decor, and a 3-meter wide bed. And there, lying beside me with his upper body bare, was my direct supervisor, Xin Yan. The brain suddenly shuts down. My name is Shu Bai. On my 26th birthday, I got so fed up with being pressured by relatives to get married that I impulsively drank too much just to spite them. The last thing I remember before losing consciousness was pointing at the handsomest man in the room and saying, "Do you like girls like me? Quiet and reserved?" And then, hell, I ended up sleeping with him. Who would have thought this person was Shenyan, the company's notorious cold minus face? I was so terrified that I lost all sense of composure. While he was still asleep, I scrambled to get dressed and bolted out the door, rolling and crawling as I went. To prevent him from taking revenge, I quit my job that very day and blocked all my colleagues' contact information, completely disappearing from their lives. I thought the whole thing would just blow over, until 2 months later, when I looked at the 2 lines on the pregnancy test and felt utterly hopeless. When my parents found out, my dad was so furious he wanted to kill that man. I burst into tears and confessed, it was me who took advantage of him. I didn't dare say it was Shenyan after all. Given his temper, I'd already be lucky if he didn't try to kill me. Encouraged by my parents, I decided to give birth to the child. After all, this child came into the world with hope. I carried the baby for 8 months. To keep up appearances, I ate so much that I became a real fatso with a face as round as a watermelon seed. Unexpectedly, fate played a trick on us. My mom and I were at the mall buying baby supplies when we happened to run into Shenyan right by the elevator entrance. My heart skipped a beat. It thought he wouldn't recognize me. But then he stopped in his tracks, looking at me with a detached expression. "Shu Bai, you were so eager to quit your job, so it turns out you're getting married." I stammered awkwardly, but my mom warmly struck up a conversation with him. To my surprise, Shenyan, usually anything but patient, actually took the time to answer my mom's questions patiently and even insisted on having dinner together. At the dinner table, he looked at my swollen belly, his eyes cold and sharp. "Where's the baby's father?" "He is very busy," I lied. Shenyan gave a cold laugh. "Today is the weekend after all. Shu Bai, I'm starting to doubt your taste." Even more absurdly, after we finished eating, he insisted on giving us a ride home. Just before we left, he actually added my mom on WeChat and said with a meaningful tone, "If ever your son in minus law turns out to be no good, you can always come to me." I was so scared that my back felt icy cold. This wasn't about finding a son in minus law. It was like they were about to raid my house. When I got home, my parents couldn't stop raving about Shenyan, so much so that they even urged me to win him over. I felt like crying but couldn't. The next day, I scheduled my prenatal checkup. My mom made an excuse about going to dance in the square and stood me up. As soon as I stepped out of the building, I saw Shenyan's car parked right at the entrance. "Get in the car," he said in a cold tone. I reluctantly sat down, thinking he'd come to lay into me. But instead, he drove me all the way to the hospital and even took care of everything from registering me to helping out with the paperwork. I fainted during the blood draw, and he instinctively pulled me into his arms, his big hand gently covering my eyes. The nurse joked that he was a good husband, but he didn't even bother to refute it. Instead, he just smiled softly and said thanks. After the blood draw, he took me out for wine and soup. He actually remembered that I'd on teats callions and specifically asked the boss to keep them off my bowl. And filled with confusion, is this still the cold minus-faced king of hell? It wasn't until a few days later that my neighbor Kifeng, who was actually my best friend in disguise, returned home and we went out for dessert together, where we ran into Shenyan again. When Shenyan saw Kifeng, his face instantly turned ashen. Thinking that Kifeng was my new husband, he ground his teeth and snapped, "Shu Bai, you really are something." Then, staggering slightly, he walked away. It turned out he'd been drunk when he went to buy coffee. Looking at his lonely back, I suddenly felt a bit uneasy in my heart. That night, I slept so deeply that I lost all track of time. When I finally woke up, it was already evening, and my phone had dozens of missed calls and friend-minus verification requests waiting for me. Just as I stepped out the door to take the trash out, Shenyan rushed over and grabbed my arm in one swift motion. Shubai, why aren't you answering the phone? Why did you lie to me? His eyes were red-rimmed, and his voice was trembling. I fell asleep, I said softly. I asked Andy Keefe isn't your husband, so why did you lie to me? The more he said, the more agitated he became. Shubai, I don't care what you've been through. Once the child is born, he'll treat him just like my own. I was stunned. Aren't you here to snatch the child? Yeah, I'm not here to take your child. I'm here to take you. He pulled me into his arms in one swift motion, his voice hoarse. Shubai, can you give me a chance? I want to be with you. Even though the child isn't mine by blood, I'll treat him just as if he were my own. I don't want you to have to raise him as a single mom. Shubai, I like you. My head suddenly felt like it was buzzing. He likes me. An HES even willing to raise someone else's child. I liked you even when you were at the company, he said, sounding as aggrieved as a child. I wanted to tell you, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. You're always smiling at everyone else, except me. And besides, if you fall asleep, it's not my fault. By the time I wake up, you've already vanished. Do you have any idea how long I've been searching for you? I was so shocked that I couldn't speak a word. Do you have any idea how happy I was that night? But as soon as I opened my eyes in the morning, Ud vanished into thin air. What a scumbag. The more he talked, the more aggrieved he became, and suddenly he started crying. I was completely baffled. It turned out that night he hadn't been drunk at all. He'd been perfectly sober, and Daichidi recognized me long ago. Honest to heaven and earth, Shubai, I'm no saint. I just can't help myself around the woman I like, he said, sobbing. Do you have any idea how long I've been looking for you? As I looked at the CEO, usually so aloof and commanding, who was now crying like a child, my heart was filled with mixed emotions. Shenyan, I'm just going downstairs to take out the trash. Could I please just toss it out first? I tried to change the subject. He quickly snatched up the trash and threw it away, then came back and tightly grasped my hand again. How about you take me home to meet your parents? I'll tell them they'll take good care of you. I'm not ready yet. I'm afraid that if I tell him the truth, he'll be terrified to death. Not today. My dad's not here. How about you come tomorrow morning? I gave in. He was like a child who finally stopped crying after getting a candy. When I got home, my mom wore a look full of curiosity and said, Did you see Xiao Shan? I nodded and repeated Shenyan's confession. What? The child is Shenyan's? My mom spewed a mouthful of water right out. I told them the whole story. After hearing it, my parents were actually even more excited than I was. You little rascal. Why didn't you just say it was Shenyan in the first place? I'm even feeling sorry for little Shen. My mom cried and slapped me, saying, if only you'd been more obedient, none of this would have happened. Early the next morning, someone knocked on my door. A dozen porters carried in a pile of valuable calligraphy and paintings, jewelry, cigarettes, liquor, tea, and candy. Shen Yan sat respectfully on the sofa, his palms sweating with nervousness. Xiaobai, you're awake, he said, standing up and gently tugging at the cuff of my sleeve. I've already talked to Uncle and Aunt. Once you agree to marry me, 70% of all the assets under my name will be transferred to you. I was shocked. He became even more flustered and quickly added, and there's a child. I promise I'll treat him as my own. I finally cowed and held it in and let out a little chuckle fest. You're being silly, I said, rubbing my belly and looking into his bloodshot eyes. The baby is yours. There's never been anyone else. Shenyan froze, his hands trembling as he placed them on my shoulders. Xiaobai, are you telling the truth? It's even more real than a pearl, if you don't believe me. Hey, you can wait until the baby is born and do a paternity test. No need, Xiaobiai. I believe in you. He pulled me tightly into his arms, his voice choked with emotion. Xiaobiai, why didn't you come find me right away? It must have been so hard for you to be all by yourself, huh? I shook my head and leaned into his arms. It's not hard at all. Actually, it originally planned to have it terminated, but then I thought about your superior genes. Keeping it seems pretty good too. He held me even tighter, as if he wanted to knead me into his very bones and blood. Xiaobiai, for the rest of my life, he'll treat you well. Really, really well. Meeting Shen Yan was an accident. Falling asleep with him after drinking was also an accident. Yet the outcome of this accidental encounter was beautifully beyond words.